Hey, this is Torrey at Housatonic River Outfitters. Today I'm going to show you how to tie one of my absolute all-time favorite flies. I don't claim credit for it because somebody's probably tied something pretty similar. I call this a Beadhead Hare's Ear Caddis, and it's definitely in my top 3 flies, especially from the months of, say, May through October when caddis are active. I find it deadly. It's a pretty simple tie. It's based on hare's ear, which is a magical ingredient on a scud hook. A couple little things I do maybe that are slightly different, but some other ones. I modified to make it look more like a caddis. It's a pretty simple fly. I'm all about catching fish, and I don't want a fly where I'm going to cry if I lose it on the bottom. I do a copper bead and a copper rib, where typically with hare's ears you'll see more commonly gold beads, gold rib. I think fish see a lot of that, and that stuff still works even on heavily fished rivers, but I tend to use more things like copper and painted black or black nickel. I think it's just a little more stealthy. Fish see it a little less. And another thing I do when I do my hare's ear blends, I like to make it myself. I'll take electric clippers, the same ones I buzz my head with, and I'll clip the whole mask off, skipping the lightest colored hair, anything from tan or darker. And that's probably 70% of my blend. And then I'll put in maybe a half bag of gray squirrel or fox squirrel. That'll darken it a little and give it a little spike. And then I'll take a bag of hare's ear antron, and I'll take about half that bag, and then I'll cut it up in maybe half-inch pieces so it'll blend. So that's maybe another 10%. So we're up to about 90 now. And then that last 10% or so, I'll take different colors of ice dub, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and prism dub, which is an SLF product developed by Davey Watton, marketed by Wapsi, and it's very similar. They do a color they call hare's ear, and I'll use this in the blend, and I also use it for the collar. But I'll also take small amounts of ice dub in different colors. Think about the colors that are in a hare's mask. There's grays, tans, various shades of browns. I'll mix all those colors in there. I like to get like 5 or 6 different colors, and ice dub has a lot of UV colors, and I like to get a little UV in the fly. I can't say for sure it makes it more effective, but it seems like it does. I think it helps them pick the fly out. So I think we're ready to tie the fly now. I have a size 14 Tiemco 2049 scud hook. You can use any hook you want, Daiichi, Tiemco. There's a lot of good scud hooks. I most commonly tie it in 14s and 16s. I'll tie it as big as a 12, and I'll tie it as small as an 18. On this version I'm going to tie here, I'm going to use tungsten bead. I do a lot of Euro nymphing, so I like to use tungsten and lead in my flies so I can skip the split shot. If you're going to indicator nymph, I would probably just use a regular copper-plated brass bead, and you don't necessarily need to add wire to it, although the wire accomplishes 2 things, as I'll show you. So I've got some 15 thousandths lead wire, which matches up nice with the 14 hook. This is probably my most commonly used size, and I like to fish this fly in fast water. Going to give it about 8 wraps of lead, break it off, break it off. I'm going to shove it up into the bead, and then I'm going to wrap my thread behind the lead. What this does is, not only does it add obviously some weight to the fly, I'm building up a ramp behind the lead, but it also wedges the bead in place. And I usually go back and forth over the lead to kind of lock it in. All right. Next, we're going to tie in the rib, which is typically copper wire. And by the way, guys, none of this is setting stone. If you want to do a gold bead and gold wire, you can do that. If you want to do a black bead and black wire, you could do that. It's all up to you. I'm using ultra wire copper in the brassy size. You could also use small. In the 14, I tend to lean toward the brassy so you can see the rib. And it's also a little more durable than the small wire because it's slightly thicker. Take a couple of wraps behind the lead. I leave the lead sticking out, and then I pull it until it just abuts the back of the lead. This helps build the taper without taking a lot of wraps. I'm going to wrap it down almost halfway into the bend. And then if you've got a vise you can turn like this, I like to put it sideways so the thread doesn't creep down the bend. Next, I'm going to dub on the hare's ear. This is the Torrey hare's ear blend that I described earlier. I love hare's ear. I'll incorporate it into a fly wherever possible. Any nymph, even dry flies. Dub it on. Not too thick. You're going to get some taper because of the underbody. If you're not using any wire underneath, you're going to need to build more of a taper. And you don't have to dub it super tight like you might with a dry fly. We're going to want a tapered, fuzzy body, a little bit skinny at the rear, and then building up to a taper. And we're going to leave a little tiny bit of room up front. I might have a little too much dubbing here. Nice thing about natural dubbing is if you overdub, you can just pull it off. I like to throw a half hitch in just in case I bump the thread so my fly doesn't come untied. Now I'm going to rivet about 5 or 6 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I come over, I usually give it 3 wraps, and then I pull the wire the other way, give it a couple, and then I throw a half hitch in. And then I don't like to cut the wire, I like to helicopter. I'll pull it, and I'll wiggle it until it breaks. That gives you a bird end, so it's not so apt to pull out. Now you'd have a fish catch and fly right there, and that's kind of how I used to fish it. Next I'm going to add in a collar of the prism dub in the hare's ear color. I used to use ice dub in holographic gold because it had kind of a brownish tinge, but I like this even better. I had tied one up with a collar like that, and I was just absolutely smashing fish one day. And I came to realize what had happened was these fibers were streaming back over the fly, sort of same idea almost as like a LaFontaine sparkle puba where you have a sheath over the fly. So I'm going to dub this collar behind the bead. And then I usually just throw a few half hitches in here. I throw a couple in, tighten, and I'm just burying them between the bead and the dubbing. 3 or 4 will do it. All right. Almost done. Not quite. This has male Velcro on it. It's pretty darn worn out. I got to make a new one. You can buy this stuff at a fabric store. Just get a popsicle stick and glue it on. It's great for teasing out dubbing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to rough it up. I'm going to treat it like it has 4 sides. Near side, top, far side, bottom. Now I'm going to brush that collar I just dubbed back over the fly so it streams over it. Now I'm going to take these fibers, I'm going to pinch them here. Anything that's too long I'm just going to rip off. Don't really want them coming much beyond the hook. And there is the deadly Hare's ear caddis. It truly is one of my top flies. So go tie yourself up some. If you need the materials, I've got them all here at Housatonic River Outfitters, of course. Thanks for watching this video.